You ready to get started with a seminar? Bryce,
you gonna tell them?
Bryce, you gonna come up here and tell everybody how on camera? Here, you come do the seminar. Tell them how to catch some fish, Bryce. How do you catch fish?
What are you gonna do?
I don't caught any fish.
You haven't caught any fish.
What's your favorite thing to fish with?
I saw some pictures with you with a fish. Did you not catch those? Did your daddy lie to me?
Daddy caught me one for me.
Daddy caught one for you, so your daddy been lying to me. I got it. Good job. You told on your daddy. Way to go, buddy.
You have baby spoons.
Those are spoons.
You have me baby spoons.
They're not your baby spoons. They're my baby spoons.
Bubby.
He's all right.
Over here, Bubby.
He's all right. All right, I guess we'll get this thing started. Got my man David Ozio to my left. We're gonna. There's a big tournament going on this week. The Mega Bass, big hourly payouts, and we're gonna talk about what I think hopefully will help some of y'all, and hopefully help some of y'all. We're gonna talk about tournament preparation, and we're gonna kind of do it two different ways because we're gonna talk about tournament preparation specific to Lake Fork and what's going on right now and how to prepare for this tournament 2 days from now if you're fishing it. But we're also going to talk about tournament preparation in general because there's a lot of people watching on the camera behind on the YouTube or whatever that may have a tournament coming up whenever on a different lake. So we're going to kind of do it both ways, talk about Lake Fork specific and general tournament preparation. For the Lake Fork deal, the first thing you got to know for those that are watching on camera, they may not understand about our slot limit here. And we've got a slot limit on Lake Fork, which means you can't keep anything between 16 and 24 inches. So for these hourly big bass tournaments like the Mega Bass, you can only weigh one fish at a time, and you really got to either catch one over 24 inches or you got to catch one barely under 16, right? As close as you can get it, right?
And it's critical too how you measure them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a big deal. There's going to be game wardens sitting out here,
yeah,
and they're going to be watching closely. And so what the public doesn't understand is how to exactly measure a fish. And when you put the fish on a pro rule, which they're using a pro rule, and I personally will take my right hand, push the fish up against the bump board, close his mouth, put a little bit of pressure on it, and then you have to take his tail, pinch it, and then swag it. You swipe it back and forth. And if that tail touches any part of that line, that fish is not going to be legal. But if you pinch that tail and move it back and forth and it doesn't touch the line, or if it's a little bit short, then you're good to go. Now, it's up to you, to qualify this by asking the tournament director here what the exact rule is on that. Can it touch the line? Can it not touch the line? And number one thing is you better have the right measuring board. Some of these people come up and they'll have a golden rule, which is not even close to a pro rule, even a check-it stick. Bob Seeley, I believe, uses a check-it stick in the Big Bass Splash, but here they use a pro rule, and those things don't measure exactly the same either. So it's critical that you find out what the exact ruler is going to be and what the rules are. Now, I'll go one step even further than that. Bud has been the weighmaster here at this tournament for years and years and years, and there's even been a time when, if you've ever had a big fish where it would measure on one side but not the other.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he told me one time, and you again will have to qualify this with him, he says that our goal is, and our job is to make this fish illegal, if possible. All right? And so if it doesn't measure on one side and it does on the other, they're not going to let that fish through. So be cognizant of that whenever you do bring a fish in to weigh. So check them on both sides.
That's a great tip about, I think, obviously the measuring deal, there's all different kinds of ins and outs, and that's kind of something you have to be really careful of. But the biggest tip out of that, as far as a general tip, is use the same board. Know what board the tournament is using. With this unique slot limit we have, know what board the tournament is using and make sure that you use that same exact board, because different boards will measure up to sometimes an eighth, quarter of an inch different. But you know, we said all that just trying to let the people that are watching on the camera understand, when you hear us talking about unders and overs, that's what we're referring to in this. So if you're listening and you don't have a slot limit lake, just so you know, you guys know what we're talking about with unders and overs. We have that kind of funky limit here. I wanted to kind of start with just general tournament preparation fundamentals that worked for me. You know, before I started guiding a lot, when I was really fishing more tournaments. I think a lot of people make the mistake of winning practice. You know what I'm talking about, David?
I did today.
You did today, right? You had customers that were tournament prepping. Y'all got unfortunate and caught a couple really good fish.
We caught 2 monster unders today, and I just hope that that those guys, that there was a bunch of them in that group, and I hope that group's there for them.
Well, listen, the deal is you go out and you catch a couple out of that group, and if they're the right ones, then, you know, that's a shame, but it is what it is. But I see a lot of people, or I talk to a lot of people that go out and practice for tournaments, and they're like, man, yeah, dude, we called them, dude, we're going to win this tournament. We caught 30 pounds. I'm like, well, you ain't catching them tomorrow.
They might not be there.
You know what I mean? So I think a lot of people go out and fish. They don't adjust the way they fish. They don't adjust their mentality. Now, we could sit here and write a book about how to pregame a tournament with map study and Google Earth and tournament preparation that you do at home before you ever get to the lake. That we could go on and on about that. Obviously, you need to study seasonal patterns. You need to study tournament history. You need to study, you know, structure in the lake. Is there grass in the lake? A lot of questions that you have to ask. Don't really want to dive in all that because that would take days to go through all of that. But in general, for me, my goal was to establish one for sure, hopefully two, possibly three working patterns, right? And get as many areas mapped out to fish those patterns that I've confirmed as possible. So if I was going to tournament fish this weekend, I would go out tomorrow and I would say, okay, on Lake Fork right now, two general patterns that are really efficient and work really well is fishing deeper offshore structure or way in the back of creeks fishing grass. Those are kind of the two deals that are really happening on Lake Fork seasonal pattern wise. And through social media, if you do enough research, you would know that from what we've been doing here lately. So I'm gonna get on Google Earth, look for areas of grass. I'm gonna go find an area of grass that's got a drain running through it. I'm gonna break it down. And the big deal I wanna get across is I'm gonna go back there, and if I get 2 bites, especially 2 bites that I like, I'm out of that area. I'm moving on to the next grass area to confirm that pattern. If I go to the next grass area, as soon as I get a bite, maybe 2 at the most, I'm leaving that, going to the next grass area. If I don't get a bite in that grass area, then I'm gonna scratch, run to another grass area. I'm gonna have all these different grass areas that I've got marked off. I'm gonna establish as many areas in that grass pattern as I can. Once I've got that pattern established, I'm gonna leave that grass deal alone. Now, I may have only caught 4 or 5 fish, and I might have 3 or 4 good areas by doing that. The key deal here is don't burn your fish in practice when you're tournament fishing. It makes no sense to me. I see people do it all the time. They go in there and they fish an area for hours, and I'm like, why are you doing this? A, if you were in there for an hour and you didn't get a bite, you don't want to fish that area in the tournament. Most likely you don't. If you were in that area for an hour and you got 2 bites, you need to be bouncing so you don't burn through the rest of those fish.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
It's critical.
That's probably the most common mistake I see with people. So I'm going to go through that, and I'm going to establish that pattern as fast as I can, or eliminate that pattern as fast as I can. Either way, then I'm going to move on to my secondary pattern, which right now would be offshore structure in 20 to 25 feet. So my pregame work would have me go and make a list of spots and mark waypoints on my graph to hit this, hit this, hit this. And I would have a list of those structures in 20 to 25 feet. Right now, for me, the structures that seem to be kind of working the best are points. Points seem to be really good. Some of the humps are probably even better than points right now. But any type of structure I found in 20 to 25 feet, I'd want to run them all, graph them, see what fish are all around them, and I'd graph wide around them, because just because they're not pulled up on this offshore structure right now doesn't mean they're not sitting over here and they might be here in an hour. So you got to graph wide areas around these structures, find out what fish are there. If you see fish on the structure, try to catch 1 or 2 of them and then move. Same principle. You just want to identify a pattern. You do not want to sit there and whack them in practice. You don't want to do that. You want to identify a pattern or eliminate a pattern as quickly as possible. Everything in tournament fishing, including preparation, is more about efficiency than anything else. It's about being efficient and covering and crossing off as much X's as you can and getting as much yeses as you can. Does that make sense?
And that's exactly, he's saying exactly what we did today.
Yep.
We started early on a point, at daylight, and he got lucky. He caught a 2-pounder on my scale, which on their scale, by the way, is 225. And also for those out there,
that's a great deal.
If you never understood this, when Bass Champs weighs, the digital scale that I use is a Rapala, and it is accurate as the day is long. Well, anytime you fish a Bass Champs tournament, for some reason, their scale weighs about 0.25 heavier. So I've seen a lot of people have a 190 fish on their digital scale, and they've ended up throwing that fish back, saying that I heard on the radio that it took 205 to get a check. Well, this is not 205. Little did they know, because the scales are different at this in particular tournament, that fish was actually at 215. And so therefore they just threw away some money. So I tell every one of my clients that when they're prepping for this event, that their scales are going to weigh heavier. So whatever your digital says, add about 0.25 to it, and that's the actual weight that that fish is going to be on their scale. I've seen their scales fluctuate anywhere from 0.17 up to 0.32. So that's a big flux based off every single fish. So that's really critical. But to his point, today we started early. My man caught a fish about 225, which will weigh on his, which is probably going to be a money fish. All right, these were all shallow and 1 to 2 foot of water.
I would say this time of year, having this mega bass in July like that, it's going to be a little different than having it in March. The fish aren't going to weigh as much, and so
yeah, they're not going to weigh as much as that.
I would say if you've got a 2-pounder, you've got a chance.
You got to, and I think that some 220, some 230, some fish in the 230 range in this event have a chance to win an hour. I do believe.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there's going to be 8 overs in this tournament. That's my opinion. I reserve the right to have the opinion, but to go along with that,
Do you reserve the right to rescind that opinion?
But in order for our pattern today, that's what we did. We started early. But the thing about this lake right now, early, I mean, that bite only lasts for 30 minutes, 40 minutes max. And then that bite was over, and we caught quite a few. And then so what we do, we backed out into about 10 to 12 foot and caught another 10 in that range in the same area. All right. When that died off about an hour later, then we went hunting.
Out of curiosity, your fish shallow and your fish when you backed out to 8 to 10 feet or whatever, and I'm not asking which one it was, but was it the same bait?
No. We started using a drop shot when we moved out to 8 to 10 foot, 10 to 12 foot, and we were throwing swim baits in 1 to 2 foot of water in the first 30 minutes.
Wow.
Yep.
Underspin or just hollow
Just a
body
regular
or-
hollow body. Yep.
Really?
Small one though.
Really?
And caught those fish, and so that works real good for about 30 minutes, and then it's about over after that. They won't hit it no more.
Now, so you're talking in roughly the 6:15, 6:45 a.m.
Yep.
area.
Yep, it's usually over by 6:45.
Yep.
Way over by 6:45. And then we dug back, and then we started looking at other patterns. And as the day went on, we just steadily moved deeper. Now, the interesting caveat to this was today, we ended up catching a 180 in 28 foot of water on a drop shot today. The kid did, Caleb did, and I've been catching some good unders in that depth of water, and we've been catching some other slot fish in that area also. Well, that bite, we tried several other places and didn't get any bites, so I started backtracking and I went back up into mid-depth ranges like 10 to 14 foot. And at the very end of the day, we ended up in a spot that was about 17, 18 foot, and at the very end of the day, they had 7 consecutive fish on 7 casts. They caught 7 consecutive fish, and we left. And that was too many, to be honest with you.
Unders or
5. They were perfect. It was 3 slots and 4 unders.
Now let me ask you this: if you were preparing for that tournament and you were going to fish that tournament tomorrow, if that tournament was tomorrow and you were out there today, would you have caught as many numbers of fish by yourself if you didn't have clients and you were just tournament prepping?
Would I have caught as many fish? We caught 23 today.
That's what I mean. Would you have, like when you say,
Yes.
okay, you backed off and you caught 10, would you have stopped after 2 or 3?
Yeah, but the reason why we caught 10 off that spot is because most of them in that spot were
Rats.
real small.
So
They
you were
were
trying
rats.
to identify if the good unders were there
That's
with
right.
them.
We were
Gotcha.
looking to find us
So
some bigger unders.
Basically, once you caught a couple of the fish you were looking for, you did leave.
Exactly.
Okay, gotcha.
Exactly.
Makes
Exactly.
sense. Makes
well,
perfect
actually, on that spot, we never did ever catch a really good under on that
Okay.
spot that we caught the rats on, and so I just
Yeah.
said, let's go.
And that's a Lake Fork specific deal. Whereas on other lakes, like, if it's a regular lake, a state regulation 14-inch minimum lake, if you're tournament prepping, man, if you've caught 2 or 3 that are, good solid keepers, you're probably going to be bouncing. Whereas out here, you might catch a couple 3 or 4 pounders and you might catch a couple rats, and you still want to know if there's any really of the right ones there. It's such a unique deal with a slot limit that it does change things. So really, even though you caught 10 fish, you weren't burning through fish because none of those fish were fish that you're going to be able to use in this unique tournament.
He did catch, during that 10 fish run, he caught one that was 16 and a half, which gave me the inclination
The idea they might be there.
there could be
Yeah.
a good fish there in that area. And so that's why we kept hacking on it until we kept catching rats. And I said, it's time to go. I got another area I want to look at.
Yeah.
And so we made the run. And
But
so
that
I was wanting to cover as much water.
in
Yeah.
your boat today.
Yeah.
So you were trying to let them catch numbers of fish.
They
and
were
possibly
well, but
a
they were
foot.
preparing for this
They were
tournament.
getting ready for this tournament.
They hired him to prepare for the tournament with
Oh,
them.
okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
Which is a common practice out here. People, I mean, we all, every time there's one of these tournaments out here, our whole week usually, most of our week is usually filled up with people prepping for a tournament.
Would you, either one of you, both of you, question to both of you, separate answers, please. You carry, me and my cousin, we hire Billy. Billy, we want to go out there, we want to target the biggest unders we can find, let's just say, okay?
You shouldn't have hired me. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
We get out there and we're catching, say we go out there and you've had days, I know you have, you might catch 30, 35 fish.
Yeah.
You know, with your customers, okay? But next day you got more customers, somebody else. You say, well, I'll take them back to the same spot. There was some fish there. You go back
So,
there.
I don't do that.
A lot of times you might find
so when you have people,
find a fish that they ain't there in the same spot as they were.
Oh, well, that always happens.
yeah, that's
That
just
always-
part. That's part of
if
fishing.
I have a full week, I'm usually hopefully going to be on enough that I can not have any overlaps.
Especially if I have tournament prep, like, and guys will usually tell you, and I'll ask when I know these big tournaments come up, I'll ask, hey, are you guys wanting to catch them or y'all want to prepare for a tournament? Because that's a completely different deal.
Right.
Like when they catch 10 off one spot, well, if they're not tournament prepping, they're going to keep catching every fish that will bite off that spot. We all will.
Yeah. Because
But if you've got,
worth nothing.
say you got 3 days in a row with guys tournament prepping, I do my very best to not show any of those 3 sets of customers the same spot.
I'm the same thing.
I will run and gun and tournament prep, and I'll even fish some new water maybe that I haven't fished, and I'll kind of pretend like I'm fishing tournament. Maybe I need to go check something here and check something there.
But are you, I guess, to word it correctly, are you more trying to show them, as you said a while ago, find patterns that will work for them more than find groups of fish for them to go back and?
Well, you need a pattern with a spot when you're tournament
Yeah, but
fishing.
you got to have confidence in what you're doing, number one.
Yeah.
No, we're showing them spot. I mean, we're showing them patterns as far as catch them on a drop shot, catch them on a Carolina rig, catch them on a chatterbait in the grass, whatever it might be. We're showing them those patterns, but we're also showing them in this area, like right here in this spot.
And-
Like that's part of the equation.
And it's make a cast right there.
Yeah,
there.
It's a cast.
It's a cast right there is
Yeah.
where you have to throw.
It's you come out here and you
don't
line your
throw
boat up
there,
off this and you
there,
throw it that
there,
one
there.
tree.
You
Yeah.
throw it
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah.
And because a lot of these spots are specific into a little ditch that runs up into a point.
Yeah.
Or it's got a swag, or it's got a cluster of stumps, which we talked about a few weeks ago on a seminar like this, where I had a spot I caught him that day in a back of a drain on a point, and there's a cluster of stumps that are up in 16, 17, 18 foot of water, and those fish were around that group of stumps. So if you pull up there, you've got to throw right there.
Right.
And that's only where you're going to catch
7
them.
feet away, you wasted cast.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and they're not going to run out there to chase it. You know, I
Right.
mean, if it comes through their living room, they're going to hit it.
Same way in the grass areas too.
Yeah.
You'll have this, I mean, as big as this whole marina, flat of grass, and there'll be like 2 or 3 little spots, 2 or 3 little drain junctions, something, creek swing, whatever, within that grass that will, it'll be the deal. I look around this crowd and I see at least 3 guys in a row right here that have all done that with me when we've been in hundreds of acres of grass and we're making circles in one little bitty area. Am I lying? No, that's how it goes down. And you'll catch all your fish right there. So it's very specific on spots too when you're tournament prepping. It needs to be. You need to dial it in. When you're tournament prepping, you need to dial it in. Now, the bait they bite today might not be. One of these days when I grow up, I'm gonna be that cool and rev my engine as I come through a parking lot. You know what I'm saying? if I ever grow up, which is doubtful.
He won't ever grow up.
Very doubtful.
You drive a Yoda, dude. You don't need to. It
Yeah,
presses on its
it
own.
flexes on its own. That's
There you
right.
go.
I like this guy right here. I like this guy. Everybody that doesn't drive a Toyota shaking their head. Now, when you're tournament prepping, you need to dial it in. Now, I'll talk about the grass deal because I tend to talk about that more anyway. But it may be a chatterbait in the grass today, and it may be a little swim bait in the grass tomorrow, and it may be a wacky worm in the grass the next day. Anyways, if you get the inside joke, you get the inside joke. That's the only thing he throws is a wacky worm. So the bait may change. You need to be ready to make adjustments on tournament day, as we do every day when we go out guiding.
Yeah.
You need to be ready to make adjustments.
Conditions change.
But holding in that sweet spot, that spot within the spot, that's a part of tournament preparation that you got to get right. You got to get that right. If you get that wrong, you're gonna miss. You're gonna miss, yeah. But not even just. I mean, like I said, hundreds of acres of grass, and there'll be a spot the size of this pavilion right here we're sitting under that most of your fish will be in. If you don't dial that part in, the rest of it, you're just gonna struggle. You know, it's not that you won't catch some fish, but you're not gonna catch them as good.
Is realize what happened when I caught that fish.
That's very true.
What happened? Where was that cast at?
Yep.
How fast was I moving it? How was it close? Was it closer to the boat? Was it further away?
Did I deflect off something?
Did I hit something? It tells the whole story on what's getting ready to happen. And today, that identical thing happened. The young man swears there had to be a tree out there because he felt it dragging through something, and he kept making the same exact cast. He had a landmark in the distance, 15-year-old kid, mind you, and he would dial that cast in every time. His dad threw up there, and every time he'd throw short, and his dad didn't get a bite. And this young man stood up there, and he fired that cast straight at a certain tree on the shore, several hundred yards away, and I mean literally 7 in a row. And I was like, wow, boy, you got it dialed. And I made him leave. I shouldn't even let him go that far.
Yeah.
You know, as far as that goes. But he was having a good time, and that's what it's about too.
Yeah, and you will, I will, that's why I asked you that earlier, because I will tend to catch more fish tournament prepping with customers than I would on my own. Yeah. The customers get into it, and they get to laughing and giggling and catching them and having a good time, and you kind of can lose your concentration and forget about the fact that, hey, we got a tournament to prep for. We kind of want to catch them a little bit. Everybody's having fun, and that kind of, you get carried away and catch a few more sometimes tournament prepping with customers. But when I'm doing it for myself, and I'm fortunate, I feel like the luckiest man on earth to get to do what I do every day. I've caught a lot of fish. I catch a lot of fish all the time. And so when I'm tournament prepping for myself, man, I'm really focused and concentrated on the task at hand, which is to dial in a pattern, figure out how I can get bit, where I can get bit, and then duplicate it and get as many of those spots as you can. It's important. It's so important to get at least one pattern, hopefully 2 patterns, possibly 3. And the reason I say that, and then within those patterns, it's important to have, you want to have at least 5 or 6 areas that you can feel like you can depend on. Okay, now you can only find what you can find. Sometimes you don't find that many, but in an ideal world, you want at least 5 or 6 areas within each pattern. Really, you want about 10, because what happens in a crowded tournament, especially like this,
just getting ready to say,
what happens when you pull in there and there's 2 boats sitting on your stuff,
yep.
And then you go to the next spot and there's 2 boats sitting on that, and so you got to find and duplicate this pattern. I mean, when the whole deal here is, when you go tournament preparing, you got to go to work. You're not out there to have fun. You're not out there to relax. It's not going to be a nice, relaxing day on the water. If you want to compete to the best of your ability, it's not going to. And there's nothing wrong with guys that want to go fish it, sign up for a tournament and fish it. And if we catch something, we cash a check, great. And if we don't, man, we have fun. Those guys, I'm not talking to them. I'm talking to the people that want to sign up and give themselves the absolute best chance to win. Those people that got something wrong inside their head, like I do, that when you compete at something,
You got to win.
it makes you real upset if you don't win. That's how I'm built. And so when I fish a tournament, it didn't matter if it's a $40 jackpot. Like, I've had people ask me to fish like an open $40 or $50 jackpot tournament, which I love fishing those. I mean, they're fun, they're relaxed atmosphere, it's a good time. And I'll tell them no, because I'm not going to get a chance to practice. Because if I go there and I get beat and I didn't put the work in, I will be so mad at myself. Now, if I go put the work in and I get beat, I won't like it, but I can handle it. You know what I'm saying? But if I don't put the work in and then I get beat, I can't live with myself. So I've turned opportunities down to fish tournaments in the past because I knew I wasn't going to have time to put the work in. And that's just how I'm built. So I'm talking to those people that are built like that. If you want to compete at the highest level, on practice day, it's got to be work. Like, you got to go dial as many patterns, as many areas, and just run, and never let up on the mental effort if you want to give yourself the best chance possible. Because the guys, you notice how it doesn't matter if you fish the Bass Champs Trail, it doesn't matter if you fish the Elite Series, it doesn't matter if you fish JC Outdoors. There's a lot of guys that show up at the top few of the leaderboard every time, right? Or almost every time. Those are the guys that work harder in practice than everybody else. Like, and their practice starts way before they ever get there, right? They're the ones that are top secret. Like, here's secret to life. Y'all ready? Y'all ready for some life secrets? The guy that works the hardest usually wins the most. I mean, that's just in everything. It doesn't matter what you do, whether it's your job or whatever. And that's the deal. This whole seminar, I'm trying to give you guys the tools to work as efficiently as possible so that y'all can put the work in, because I understand what it's like to be that guy that gets one day to prepare. You know what I mean? Like the guy that showed up here this evening and is going to fish the tournament Sunday, and he's got to practice tomorrow, and that's all he gets. I know what that's like. I've been there. I've done that. I used to say this a lot in the beginning, but everything I've done on this channel has been geared towards what I would have wanted out of this channel when I was a weekend angler. When I was a dude that had a 60-hour-a-week job, 80-hour-a-week job, and thought about nothing but fishing all the time, and every time I had a chance I was on the water. But man, it sure was hard to keep up with these guys that had the inner working knowledge all week. It was hard. And so
like us, we live in Louisiana. I mean, guys fishing, and not always the case, but guys that live on the lake, and they're, you know, they get home from work in the evening, they can go spend a few hours on the water. Whereas, you know, we're driving 4 or 5 hours over here. You get one day to kind of look around, maybe practice. And me personally, I'm probably going to hate this statement. I don't pre-fish. That's my look.
No, I don't hate that statement. That's what works for you.
I go around and look, and I try to find structure, try to find fish on structure, and try to look at a pattern off of that. And then when it comes tournament day, I'll put baits together. I think I could apply that too.
And that's what works for you. And for me, I always wanted to confirm it. Like, I would have all these ideas in my head. Okay, I see fish here. I know there's some fish here. But for me, I needed to know how to catch them, have an idea what baits I could use to catch them, types of patterns. I needed all the information. I wanted all the information, as much as I could gather.
See, that's my stupid look, though. If I pre-fish tomorrow, I'll catch a 17-pounder tomorrow, and I won't get a bite in the tournament.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you catch a 17 during pre-fishing, it'll be worth it. Yeah. That'd be a special deal right there. I know what you're saying, though. And I know people like that tell me they don't pre-fish. Hey, that's the beautiful thing about this sport is it takes all different ways to do it. I mean, everybody can be right. But the guys that are, I'm telling you now, the guys that are consistently at the top of the tournament standings on whatever trail it is, they're working hard. Yeah. They're putting in, I'm talking about work when they go. Yeah. And so that's what we're doing tonight. We're trying to give you guys the tools to be efficient and be effective in your preparation to give y'all the best chance to compete against some of these guys that sign up on this deal on Sunday. They fish out here a lot. Yeah. So you're going to have to put some serious work in to catch up to them tomorrow. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what we're trying to do.
You need a backup for the backup. Right. Is what you need too, because I mean, I've won many practices over the years of doing this, and I mean, it's just frustrating.
It happens to everybody though, you know.
To go out there and then you think you've got this dialed, and then they aren't there, and the problem that you end up committing to it, thinking, well, maybe they're going to be a little later today because the moon is a little bit further down than what it was, or so there's some variable. Well, the clouds were here today, they weren't there yesterday, or something. Clouds are going to blow out, and you'll end up invariably staying in a spot and end up, instead of adjusting and going to a backup pattern which can support it, and then end up digging the day out. So you have to be cognizant of it. There's a fine line between doing it right and doing it wrong.
So let's transition a little bit, and let's talk a little bit about Lake Fork specific stuff and Lake Fork specific patterns that are going to work this weekend during this tournament. And I'll talk about grass for a little bit. I know you fished some grass here lately too. We've sat there and stared at each other.
We were both in the same area, 50 yards apart.
We were talking to each other. Every time he'd catch one, he'd be talking to me, or I'd catch one, I'd be talking to him.
And then I snapped a 732 on him, and I was like,
yeah.
Over or slot?
No, it was a slot.
But we were fishing a guide tournament where you could weigh them in the boat. We were weighing them on our scales in the boat, so that counted.
Was that the guide tournament after the 22 kill?
Yeah, yes. Okay. Yeah. In that tournament that morning, like most of that morning, we were staring at each other, having conversation back and forth. We were right next to each other.
How did y'all take place?
Second and third. And we were in first. It was literally me and him in first and second the entire day. And Jonathan Bowling caught a 5.5 pounder in the last 10 minutes to leapfrog us. He saw Johnny the Kid.
He pulls up within about 40 yards of me, and he said that he had started there that morning, the place I was finishing on. And so where he threw to, I think, well, there's no chance. That's up on top of the hump. And I don't think they're going to be there, because I was throwing on the outside, on the down ledge of the hump. Yeah. And that's where I'd been catching them later in the day. And I'll be dipped in it if he don't pull up there. And he grafts around, and he's literally 40 yards from me, and he makes a cast. Next thing I look around, they got the net. And I went, no way. Caught a 5.5, snapped me off.
Yeah, 5.5 pounder with like 10 minutes left.
10 minutes.
David was in first. I was behind him by 1/4 pound. So any keeper, we could have scratched that one keeper at the end of the day. we would have leapfrogged David, but John ended up catching 5.5 and jumping over both of us.
Yeah,
So,
he got around this boat.
yeah.
It was a fun tournament.
It was a lot of fun. It was fun to know where because me and him were so tight all day. It was like
we were going back. He'd catch one, and then
yeah.
I said we got, and all of a sudden we'd catch another like a 3-pounder, and then all of a sudden we'd get around him, and it was typical major league fishing, leapfrog, and
it was a lot of fun.
yeah, it was like.
Did y'all have live updates in the boat? I mean,
Oh yeah, we were on a group mix. We knew every fish that was caught.
Every fish that was caught.
wow.
Every fish that was caught, and we get an official score update every hour.
It was a lot of
More
fun.
stressful or less stressful that way?
Actually, you know,
It's not.
strange.
I don't think it's stressful. I think it keeps you grinding.
Yeah.
Like, cause I got out to an early lead, and in most tournaments, like even if we would have just had hourly updates, I got out to an early lead pretty quick before David had gotten, or he'd just gotten back there, was about to get back there. I'd gotten out to a decent lead, and in a lot of situations, I would have kind of been like, oh yeah,
Yeah, because you caught a 612, I think.
First fish was a 612, and then we started throwing a couple. And what nobody knew, unless you guys watched the video y'all saw, we had 3 fish that were within 2 ounces of, because we only counted the fish over 2 pounds. So we had 3 fish that were 1 pound 14 ounce. So 2 ounces shy of being a scoreable bass. So we were 6 ounces from 6 more pounds.
Oh, so in the guide tournament, you had to have a 2-pound to be scored.
2 pound was the minimum. And I had 3 fish that morning right off the bat that were 2 ounces short, right after I caught that big one. And then we started catching some 2s or whatever, 3s.
That was Carmen Coach catfish.
Yeah, that's right. But we,
You what?
he was with Mark Peck
yeah.
in Mark Peck's boat.
We broke out 5 fish that we used all day long.
Carolina rig.
That's
No way. He don't use a drop shot.
Hey, we can't, Paul, we got to edit that out. Pack man will sue us if we tell people he throwing a drop shot.
And uses a drop shot. I've been in a boat with him before when he's used a drop shot.